welcome everyone to the July 24th Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. I'm the chair, Commissioner Nick Scull. To my left is Commissioner Cheryl Lockard. To my right is Commissioner Anthony Perusi. Sean Kilkenny, our solicitor, is here. Matt Canlin, our township manager, and Pat Stacey, our director of Parks and Recreation. Still building. I'm watching that little circle go around. This demo was first. Okay, well, jump right up. Our first order of business tonight is a presentation. I think I would have this down. Now I can read it. Presentation by Claire Donato, architect, about the Farmstead Park Adaptive Reuse Plan.
Commissioner, if I, a little introduction, please. You may recall the master park plan for Woodlawn Park includes a community center. The response during the survey and through the public meetings for that project suggested that the residents indeed wanted a recreation center in Upper Moreland Township. So the board asked that we look at alternatives other than Woodlawn Park, and one location that we thought might be suitable was Farmstead Park. The board approved a project for Claire Donato from Mark Thompson Associates to come in, work with the Parks and Recreation Department and the Farmstead Alliance to make some determinations if a recreation building, recreation center is feasible there, which would include a gymnasium and some other spaces. The report is concluded. Claire is here this evening to report on the findings. And after the presentation, we'd be happy to answer any questions, a combination of Claire or myself. Claire, thank you.
Thank you for inviting us to speak with you this evening and to present the study for Farmstead Park that was circulated with the agenda for this evening's meeting. My name is Claire Donato, architect and principal with Mark Thompson Associates. The study was prepared to assess concepts for reuse of the existing barn on the Farmstead property, as well as an addition to the property for a new recreational space, specifically a gymnasium. The brief study focused on reuse of the barn, requirements for new construction, a program for uses and quantifying the amount of space needed for each use, order of magnitude budget comparisons, and visualizations for an appropriate character for the new construction, including scale, materials, and appearance. We're all familiar with the special setting of the Farmstead property. It is a significant cultural landscape surviving within a densely developed region, and it is an important asset to the community for both programming and open space. Strategies for siting and orienting any new construction will be key for successful design. In addition to the township's interest, you have the very beneficial partnership with the nonprofit Farmstead Alliance that is invested in preserving and making these assets a vital part of the community and has the ability to bring constituency, funding, and other resources to the property. This will come into focus as we discuss how best to incorporate the barn into usable space. There are a couple of guiding principles that we established to help inform the assessment, including maintaining the character of the barn and the landscape, and honoring the scale of the existing buildings by identifying strategies to manage the scale of a new building on the property. Strategies for controlling the budget are also of primary importance and can help to inform the decision-making and an approach, particularly related to the reuse of the barn. The site analysis included an overview of zoning, utility locations, the farmstead buildings, parking, the playing field, the landscape master plan, and just the orientation of the site to the solar path. Focus a little bit on zoning. This is, of course, a recreational district. As a public park owned and operated by the township, the requirements for lot size, building area, maximum impervious surface area, front, side, and rear yards are minimal, but there is a maximum height restriction of 40 feet. Also, we recommended that even though there wasn't a specific dimension for the front, side, and rear yard setbacks, recommended 40 feet, similar to the other uses within the recreational district. The property is pretty reasonably served by existing utilities. That would need more investigation. There's an existing parking area well situated at the entrance and related to the buildings with 54 parking spaces, 3 of which are ADA. The high point of the site is adjacent to the barn. Let me just... Byberry Road is here, parking here. The historic core of the farmstead property are the blue shaded buildings, the barn that we're speaking of specifically this evening, the carriage house, the small building in the center, the farmhouse, and then the spring house, and of course the playing fields. The barn is in fair to good condition and can be made usable for flexible programming space. It would, however, require fairly intensive effort to make it fully conditioned and fully fit out for highly programmed uses. It would also require a level of sensitivity in the fit out so that the character is not lost or undermined. So we pose the question, how do we bring the barn online for recreational and community use in a way that works with the project goals and within a reasonable budget? The prior removal of what we're calling the north bay of the barn, which is this section here. So as you can see, that section of the building is no longer there right now. So the prior removal of that section of the building provides an interesting opportunity to link the barn with the new construction and to focus on cost-effective and energy-efficient new construction. Reinterpreting the shape and floor plate of the north bay on 2 levels will provide approximately 1,600 square feet of new program space and create a sympathetic and compatible design to link the building to new construction. So the preservation approach is, the barn is very well suited to supplemental community space. Maintaining its historic relationship to grade and the landscape is important to the character not only of the building, but of the whole property. Restoring the prior massing of the north bay, configured for adaptive reuse, will provide program-intensive space for new uses and new programs. It can be fully conditioned for year-round use. The forebay on the south side of the barn and its relationship to the enclosed outdoor yard is well situated to connect programming both inside and outside the barn. And depending on access and availability to grants for historic buildings, the barn can be restored incrementally using grant opportunities specifically targeted for historic improvements. So as we began to look at siting a new large building on this property, we took cues from the organization of the historic farmstead building, with entrances at grade, the setback between the buildings, the ensemble that it creates between the buildings and the outdoor spaces that are made in those relationships. Generally, the buildings have a perpendicular organization and the entrances face south. We also want to be able to utilize the site circulation and the accessible parking. And we're also aware of new trail alignment, which will be coming online as part of the master plan. So we started by looking at this shape that is approximately the size of a basketball court. So we started by looking at it in the east-west orientation, set back. The orange line is the 40-foot setback from the property line. We didn't pursue this too aggressively, and the reasons for that were by positioning it within the setback, it begins to intrude on the historic core of the property and crowds the buildings. It also, because that it's seated at the high point of the site, it eliminates the landscape relationship of what we call a bank barn. It doesn't work very well with the grades, which all slope down to the west, and the long wall runs parallel to neighboring properties and places unnecessary emphasis on the gymnasium building. If we rotate that and also set it within the setbacks, it not only stays within the boundary of the setbacks, but also minimizes impact to neighbors. After adding supporting space requirements to the gymnasium, the arrangement begins to create these usable spaces between the buildings, between the gymnasium and the recreation facilities in the barn, and between the carriage house and the forebay yard of the barn, and then a direct link to the farmhouse. It also organizes access to all the buildings from a common point located closely to the existing parking and accessible parking spaces. It takes advantage of the grades to slightly submerge the gym and diminish its height. And while this orientation shifts the field slightly to the east, the overall dimensions, if the east side of the existing field is left as is, remains within the requirements for advanced levels of soccer play. The next few slides focus on the program, the uses of the space, their relationship and adjacencies, entrances to the building, massing, relationship of the floor levels to grade, and the heights of the buildings. So starting with the plan on the left, this would be the approach from the parking area. This is the existing barn building. You'd enter into a lobby that is light-filled with a view through to the courts. There would be a small seating, gathering area, offices, and reception. A short flight of steps down or an elevator down would lead you to the entrance to the court. The full-size court, 50 feet by 94 feet, served by exits on all four corners, a service from the west, service and mechanical spaces located on the north side. Linking to what we're calling the North Bay addition of the barn would be an infill building that would have locker and changing restroom facilities, first aid room. And then facing towards the historic properties could be a restroom that could be open even if the rest of the facility is closed to serve the historic property and activities going on. Entering and half a flight up would bring you to this location in the lobby with a link building, light filled with views out to the landscape, to a multi-purpose program room that connects out directly to grade and then connects to the main space of the barn. And here you see the barn. So we're just looking at this multi-use room, the new construction. That could link to the main space of the barn, and we've looked at several different ways that the space can be laid out for various different events. Music performances, lectures, films, just children's activities, birthday parties, and was expanding out to the veranda area with views over the forebay and outdoor programs. So linking from the landscape on this side through to the main barn space, a new code compliant stair down can link to the outdoor programs. One of the constraints of the existing barn building is the vertical clearance in the lower level. Not very tall, not very habitable in terms of light views, and just required clearances for height. However, there is always a need on a property like this for landscape maintenance, for equipment, table and chair storage, mechanical and other support spaces. So it could be well, it could serve the property well in that regard. And then we just looked at a variety of different layouts for the barn. Looking at the same spaces in section or in the vertical dimension, this would be from the playing field looking towards the barn, entering into the volume of the lobby, down half level to the courts. As you see, sinking it a little bit into the landscape really helps to keep the ridge down so that it's just less than the barn, and the barn remains the dominant building in terms of height. This view from the entrance or cut through the lobby shows the volume of the lobby space, and then the linking to the new program space on the north side of the barn. Two more views cut through the main space of the barn, looking at the gymnasium. This would be the new construction portion of the barn. And you see here the low clearance that I was speaking of in the lower level. But you get this wonderful relationship of the landscape on the north side through to the program space, down through the forebay of the barn, and out to the outdoor programming space on the south side of the barn. And then the last section view with the fields on the left, the gymnasium slightly lowered into the landscape, and the barn beyond. And just a few three-dimensional views. Please keep in mind, this is just a study. These are massing models. These are not designs or meant to show exactly how the building would look. But you can see the focus is on trying to create the ensemble of spaces that respects the historic core of the building and makes the large building fit in with the overall scale. We've created a tabular version of the uses, comparing the square footage to the similar study that was done, mostly to just say that this is a very comparable program and amount of space required. Similarly, with the budget, we deferred to the methodology that was used for a similar study, and started with the square foot unit cost for the recreation facility that was used for the Woodlawn Park Master Plan report. But since there have been a great deal of changes with construction costs, the economy, availability of materials, we've really seen prices escalate. I'm sure you're all aware. This chart is really just to show the square foot unit costs that was used for the report, adjusting that for kind of 4 years of inflation, and then looking at what a high range might be. The table is divided with the Woodlawn Park project here, and then escalating for those two low and high budget range, and then the comparison for the farmstead concept at the lower level of the chart. And then finally, just to end on a few images, as I said, this is not a design, but wanted to give a sense of the types of buildings and materials that we might look to. And one of those is agricultural buildings, simple shapes, materials, and most importantly, to try and keep the scale of that large recreation portion of or the gymnasium portion in scale with the rest of the farm buildings. Also, in looking at long span options, steel is always an option. However, availability and costs for steel have been pretty volatile. So the other option of looking at wood long span, there's some very desirable aspects of using wood. Availability, cost has gone down, and just the character would be very fitting in this case. Also looking at panelized wall construction, both opaque and translucent, transparent, to create that kind of scale and texture. But also one of the nice things about that type of construction is it combines everything in one panel, the insulation, the light, cladding, and could be very cost effective. And then finally, just leaving some images of other barns. I think the goal here would be to not only create a new recreation facility and gym, but also to maintain the wonderful character of the farmstead buildings, including this barn. And without much intrusion, it can serve all sorts of programs as it does in other communities. Thank you.
Comment. Thank you, Claire. Before we get into questions, if you have any, this report was meant to serve as informational for the Board of Commissioners should they decide in the near future or further down the road if a recreation facility is warranted. This would give you an option as to another possible location as compared to Woodlawn. Kate Kohler was involved in this as well, from the programming aspect especially, to consider how much space we need. Kate and I looked at all of our parks to determine if there are other areas where we think a recreation facility could go. These are probably our two options. The benefits of Farmstead Park as compared to Woodlawn Park is, first of all, Woodlawn is in more of a neighborhood, not that Farmstead is not a neighborhood, they both are. There's smaller roads, narrower roads at Woodlawn Park. Farmstead Park has Byberry Road, which also has a traffic signal at it, so access may be easier. It's very close to the elementary schools and the middle school, so after-school programs could happen much more easily. It also, if this is something the board moved on in the future, it will bring new visitors to Farmstead Park, where the park right now might see scores or hundreds of visitors. A lot are the same folks that come. If we added recreation facilities here, you would see thousands of visitors to that park, which would raise awareness, which would bring a not highly used park currently into a very highly used park. So there's a lot of benefits. Of course, same concerns that we have at Woodlawn as it is in a neighborhood. So there's pros and cons to both of those sites. With that, if there's any questions, be happy to, Claire or myself would be happy to answer them.
Okay, yeah, I have a few.
Yeah,
Not as many as you.
You wanna go first?
Yeah. Nick?
I'll just wait.
Okay. So yeah, I like the idea of a recreation center at this park versus Woodlawn. As you said, it's in a neighborhood, but the entrance would not be from a neighborhood, right? There's more space here. I am concerned, so when I look at the different pricing, it doesn't seem like it's all that much more expensive to do it here versus Woodlawn, but I'm not sure that these comparison numbers include the work just to get the building to the point of ready to convert it to a new use.
Just a couple comments, and then I can, Claire can add to this. When we got the numbers for the Woodlawn master plan, it came out to 5 million plus. Called the architect who designed that, and he said that the numbers they used were from the previous year or year and a half. So he immediately said, there's an escalator that's going in there. And now we're, a year and a half after that. So He and I discussed what that escalator cost would be. So you see in that finance graph, the existing Woodlawn Park is the first column. The low end was what I think we call it for Farmstead is the second column, and then the high end would be the third. And all of that can be modified pending the materials we use or what we do there. We did not pay in this report for a detailed cost estimate analysis. That was a separate fee which was not approved for this plan. So if this is something that the board feels, yes, let's get that information, we can go out and get an exacting costs for materials and of what the barn, the rec center could be. And I'm sorry, the other part of that question was, are there other costs associated with the preparedness for the site?
Yeah, just to get the barn ready to convert it to this use. Is that included? Like it needs a new roof, right? And I don't know what else.
We included in that tabular format rehabilitation costs for the barn.
Okay.
I think it would have to be prioritized to get it in a safe condition so that this main space could be usable. But I think, as I mentioned, one of the advantages of this property and thinking about integrating the barn with the concept of a recreation center is that with the historic property and with the nonprofit, there are grants available for historic structures that may not be available if this were all new construction. So it gives the benefit of incrementally dealing with some of the overall restoration needs while focusing more immediately on getting the space safe and usable.
Claire, just for the board's information, I don't believe there's a lot of utility costs associated with this because we don't have utility, we didn't do a utility study on this. So those numbers may not reflect a final, obviously they don't reflect the final cost, but there's going to be some utility or some plumbing work to get services to the barn that are not included in that breakdown. Am I correct with that?
Correct. And the numbers that are included now are purely square foot order of magnitude budgetary numbers. As any project progresses into the design phase, a different approach would be taken for cost estimating, where you begin to really take off all of the specific utility costs, site development, the building structure, each of the materials. But at this point, it was so preliminary, it was really just to get a sense of, is it comparable to what you've been considering thus far?
Yeah, I guess I feel like it still is hard to tell. Like, I think it's important if we do go forward with this location to still look at whether we would use the barn or just have it be a separate building, just because I'm concerned about the costs, how much more it would cost to use the barn.
Well, focusing on that North Bay addition would allow it to almost be a standalone building. And then it would be all new construction. It could be fully climatized, of course, and really integrated with the gymnasium. Mm-hmm. And that would, again, allow the historic building to kind of be its own thing, but linked to as a different kind of asset and different kind of programming space.
Mm-hmm. As I've said many times in this room, the property is state eligible to be a National Historic Site. And what that means is that for maybe $20,000, we could become a National Historic Landmark, and then we'd be eligible for more federal funds. So that's been a goal all along. It's just never been a priority. The other thing I would like to say about having the school across the street, we've had them over in years past. The teachers and the superintendent walked around the property. There were lots of ideas how this could be connected to middle school and elementary school programs, environmental stuff. And this thing, all the environmental stuff is going to go on in there. We're building a water retention basin in the wetlands, all sorts of trail work and that kind of thing. So science, when we were there talking about history, the teachers were talking about all the different applications that this would have, and being close to the school is a good advantage.
Can I ask a question? Are you familiar with historic tax credits, federal historic tax credits? I know this is not an income producing property, but I know those can be bought and sold as kind of a commodity. Would it be possible to take advantage of federal historic tax credits for a project like this, or is because it's not income producing, it wouldn't apply?
We've had a couple of nonprofit groups that have been successful in obtaining them, one in Philadelphia and one in Delaware.
Is that still 20% on the historic tax credits? Do you remember?
No, I mean, it is, you do need someone who can.
Accountant.
Financial deal making, essentially, to sell them, yeah.
Because those, it used to be, it's been a long time since I was involved in one of those, but we did a bunch of those, and the federal tax credits were about 90 cents on the dollar. So we couldn't take advantage of it because we're not taxable, but entities could get the tax credits, and you have to get accountants, and it's pretty, complicated, but then you can sell it on the market and get probably 90 cents on the dollar. So you could get 15% of the cost of the construction, eligible construction costs. So it really is a game changer if it's eligible, but I know we're not income producing, but.
Well, I think it was difficult for nonprofits for a while, but as I said, we're currently working with two that have been able to make that work.
And there's no, Pennsylvania doesn't have any state historic tax credits that you're aware of?
Just one more comment. I do think it's important as we move forward to keep separate the goal of having a recreation center and rehabilitating the barn.
One of the benefits, one of the challenges we have is we don't really have any large indoor space. So a number of events, special events, activities, sporting activities, all those kinds of things, we don't really have facilities for that. And one of the things that seems so attractive about combining the two is multi-use. So you can have kids' activities going on in a rec center and other activities in a barn that allows, for a family or other people to be doing multi-activities in the same facility.
I think it would be awesome space.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned about the cost.
Yeah.
However, we're going to save that property one way or the other. We're working on it for 25 years. And whether it becomes a recreation center or not, that part's going to continue. So it's really talking about the additional costs. Anyway, that's how I look at it.
Okay, so I have a couple bullet point thoughts that I'm going to throw out there. Not all of them are questions, but things that we should continue to think about. So, Commissioner Skull, you mentioned the ecological preservation that's occurring on this site and the ecological rehabilitation. And I see this site as three different things, right? Currently, it's a historical preservation project that we're trying to wrap our hands around and figure out how we're going to do this and how we're going to pay for it. It's an ecological showpiece, basically, with all the grant money that we're getting and the things that we're doing on that site to affect the pennypack and the neighbors, the stormwater management and just vegetation in general. The third thing that I would love for this to be couples those two things together and makes this a sustainable benchmarking property, not only for the township, right, but well, the whole thing. Right? We can do so much with this to bring it up to speed and up to par, to highlight what the township is willing to commit to, and this is a great property to be able to do. So I would love to continue to look at those three things together, because this site, the whole property worked together as a site. And now I don't want to uncouple that while we're trying to program it. Farmsteads worked as farmsteads, and so we should plan this park to work as one continuous unit. So that's very important to me. Alan, I'm going to call on you for a second. Does any of this effort affect the historical designation or affect our abilities to find grants or get it onto any kind of registry if we adapt it in this capacity?
I think that it'll affect it in a positive way. Now, I do know that when we go through the process of going for the National Register of Historic Places designation, that the state is going to want to understand what we do. And we have places along the way in our township that will help govern how everything looks, whether it's, you know, working with architects, engineers, the township, through its historic commission, Farmstead Alliance, and so on, that when we present it to the state, you know, for consideration, and that it will strengthen the idea, especially, you know, as it appears on the outside, and to the degree that we don't cover up a lot of the historic features inside, it will still maintain, we can still have that goal and not adversely affect that. So
Okay. Is this your first time seeing this presentation, or were you part of the process?
I sat in the meetings and participated, and so yeah.
How does the Farmstead Alliance feel about this?
I think, I can't speak for all, but I have discussed the concepts with them in our past couple of meetings. There's the way I gauged it, there was a general acceptance of the idea of an extra building next to the barn.
Yeah.
So we will continue to discuss it with our organization. We have a meeting Wednesday.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to say too, that this is the first time this is being presented anywhere.
Sure, okay.
The neighbors we have not spoken to the neighbors about this, so that, you know, if they're seeing this tonight, this will be the first time.
Okay.
This is not happening. I just want to, you know, this is for consideration for the board for a future time. So I don't want anyone to misinterpret what we're talking about here this evening.
Completely understood, Pat, and I think from my knowledge, this is fantastic, and I'm really happy to see energy behind this site right now. But weighing on what our opinion is of how this site is developed is also the opinion of the Farmstead Alliance, the opinion of the neighbors. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But because we're seeing this tonight and we have Alan here, I figured it's a good start to ask that question. All right, so some specific program. Oh, we're leaning into this being a basketball court, an indoor basketball court. Have we verified or have we done any type of programmatic survey to understand what the right program is that's needed? I know that we did the Woodlawn survey, and that building was, in my opinion, a very different caliber than what this is going to be. And so do we think that this is the right program that we should be studying?
Two parts to that, at least. The focus group, one of the focus groups for Woodlawn was youth sports, and we spoke extensively with the basketball organizations and their need for indoor basketball space.
Okay.
Additionally, Little League and soccer would like indoor spaces as well, right? Everybody would. In our department, the three of us, Jen, Kate, and myself, talked about our programming opportunities and our programming needs for indoor facilities, and even for summer camps that we right now run at the schools, where we're really filling all of those rooms. So from the recreation side for our department, this is another step in getting us to where we would like to be as a department. From a youth sports or auditorium space, it's another step getting them there. The requests were for 3 gymnasiums, right? So that's not practical in our space. So it doesn't get anybody where they want to be eventually, but it's a logical next step, and we think we can fill this facility throughout the year with recreation program or birthday parties or rentals or youth groups using it, school district uses.
Yeah, because I see it, when I hear this, I see it more as community rooms and like rental spaces for birthday parties, camping events, that kind of thing, which would significantly reduce the footprint of the building and therefore reduce our cost as well, reduce our utility costs, all that kind of stuff gets coupled together. So I just wanted to make sure that a basketball court was really the direction that the community is asking for, because there are ways for us to still develop this site, make a community room, but with a different program, have different effects to the overall pocketbook.
Actually, just this space could be used for basketball, indoor, other sports, right? So it could be multi-use for sports.
I envision it will be multi-use for sports. I envision that our Golden Age Club could have meetings here or events here in the gymnasium. We see it as we are going to program, my department sees it that we will program this well over 50% of the available time.
Yeah.
And the times that it's not programmed, perhaps, and this is, perhaps on Saturdays from, 10 to 1, the space is available for rentals if somebody wants to have a birthday party or a Sweet 16 dance or whatever it may be. So we're looking at this as a, 60, 75% programmed by us.
Right.
The township, and then potentially other uses.
Okay. Right. Yeah, right. More pickleball. Okay, and Claire, sorry to make you stand up again, but a couple programmatic questions or statements. So the first one is parking quantification. I don't know if your study went that deep into this.
Superficial, but
Okay.
I think that was one of the requirements for the public park owned and operated by township. I think it just says something like adequate to the use, so we'd have to investigate that.
Yeah, just if I may, I looked at the standards for gymnasium space and the amount of parking you would need. This meets that. I looked at gymnasium and if a classroom was occurring, and our parking would meet that. However, further analysis has to be done, because if we're having a gymnasium and classrooms and an event at the farmhouse, do we have adequate parking? Fortunately for us, we can maybe partner with the school, and there's parking right up the road. So those are things that I think have to be developed.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate your concern on max heights and setbacks, and I think that the 40-foot off of a neighboring yard, it makes sense. I do question, again, it's cost and it's also functionality and layout. Half-height elevators are never great ideas in my mind, right? Like, they're more trouble than they're worth most of the time. And I wonder, in doing a quick takeoff of the height of the sections that you showed, you've got about 32 feet above grade and then about 7 or 8 feet below grade. You'd still be within that 40 feet. Massing is a whole thing that we'll play with later. But again, putting this out there as a thing for us to talk about, because the height is very important, especially contextually within the site. But if there's cost savings, if there's functionality and maintenance and other issues that we can be looking at, those are things that we should at least keep on the table. And I had 2 more. As a rough estimation, right? You're showing the first floor of the barn as mechanical and storage space. Is there a possibility, do you think that that first floor is large enough to accommodate mechanical space for the entirety of the facility? Or do you need that apse at the top of the building for additional mechanical?
Hard to say.
Okay.
Yeah, and the limitations right now with the existing structure, the clearances, and probably need to excavate to make that space, as I said, habitable. But if you start to look at it for major mechanical uses, it may.
Okay. All right.
May have limitations.
Yeah, understood. And the only reason I bring that up, and I know that it's extreme development, is where the mechanical space is programmed now. It's very close to the neighbors. It's not high-end mechanical space, but it is going to be some extreme conditioning for the basketball court. So it's things to consider.
Yeah, it require a lot of
Yeah.
air handling, yes.
Right.
Well, that would be another aspect to consider with the existing barn, because you'll need to bring in a lot of fresh air to send it back out again, and that may not be the best location to do that.
Right. Okay. And then we can talk about, this might align with some of our farmstead work that we'll talk about later in the agenda, but I'm looking at where you have the bathrooms positioned on this. And again, it's massing, and I know we're only talking about this on a high level, but those focus inward to the other buildings on campus. We have nothing that faces the exterior field side. And so it might be something where we can use the farmhouse to be interior program amenity, and this building being exterior program amenity, and cater that addition more towards the playing fields and the interior courts, which would then change some of the orientation that you've depicted so far. So again, just things to think about that might give us opportunities for the other buildings that are on the site. Because it's great that we're looking at this one, but again, at a campus, how does this all start to work together? And I think that's all my notes. Yes, thank you. Right.
I just had a quick question. I guess I'm still kind of focusing on the financing part of it. I guess there's probably only maybe 2 phases you could break this into. I mean, you got to build the rec building. You can't probably phase that one. But if you did, I think Commissioner Lockhart was referring to this, if you did the rec center and you had a second phase, that was the barn. Is the barn in good enough shape that you could kind of mothball it a little bit, do that, and then maybe phase it in? That way you're breaking that cost is not, it's a little bit less for phase 1. And the problem with that, of course, is you do the main building and then the barn never happens. It's almost,
I think it really wouldn't take much to make it safe. And I think if that's the first priority, it can be brought online as the restoration work continues, or additional aspects of its rehabilitation are targeted strategically over time.
yeah.
You could also use that northern addition as sort of like a scaffolding, right? Tie that structure into the structure of the barn and give yourself a couple Band-Aids to hold it up a little bit longer.
Yeah, the roof is great on it. I mean, the roof's fine. So I'm sure it's very stable. It's not going anywhere.
I mean, I have to stress that our work so far is very preliminary, and this, while it looks like maybe a design that has all the pieces and parts worked out, this is really just a study and diagrams really, rather than floor plans.
Yep, understood.
But I think the idea of phasing is something that and I alluded to earlier, is, how can we bring the barn along while you maybe initially focus on the recreational new building, but bring the barn along in a way that works with the overall goals for the property, as well as budget and just its historic integrity too.
Yeah.
I personally would do it the other way around, right? Where I would focus on the barn and the addition of community room type spaces, and then keep the gymnasium as a secondary part.
I think there's community rooms in the gym too.
Not in the large.
Aren't there on the,
They're
or
on-
the new building? I mean, the new building part has community rooms, I
This
thought.
space,
Yeah, so I would take where your double doors were, that thick wall, and go strike a horizontal line.
here?
Yep, just go straight across and chop the whole gym off.
That's phase 1.
Yeah,
This
everything
is-
from the south, I would do phase 1. And then the gym, that whole thing, because that is just a double height gym space, there's nothing else to it. And the mechanical space that's to the north would be solely,
Mostly for
most
the
likely
gym,
for
yeah.
the gym.
Yeah.
So you could isolate that entire facility.
I just feel like a gym is a need that the community has talked about for a long time, and we are going to have some community rooms at Woodlawn still probably, right? A smaller, is that the plan, or?
No, not right now. No, the phase 1 of Woodlawn is everything except the building.
But I mean, but phase 2 is still planned to have a small building, is that right, or no?
Phase 2 is the complete rec center at this point. We haven't
okay,
scaled
got
it back, but it's certainly something we can discuss.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, especially a math problem, but as I look at this, if you took what the idea about drawing that line across and having that be phase 1, what would be a rough estimate based on these numbers? Are we looking at, is there a way of calculating that just within $1 million? I mean, if it's like $2 or $3 million, because the whole thing's like $10 million on the high end, right? But what's that? 11. Well, 10.7. If you did that first phase, are we looking at $2 or $3 million?
My computer just hung up on me here, of course.
Don't go over.
Is it hard?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind looking at that, if there was a way of kind of giving a guesstimate of that.
And we could, I mean, if we got a square footage number, you have the square foot, 250, 366, and 500, so we could do that. Site improvements, all that other stuff would probably be very similar. And you'd want to get it designed and engineered all at the same time too, so I wouldn't see that changing. It would just be a square footage takeoff. You would have all of phase 2, however, part of that price. So that 1.4 million for phase 2 would be part of it.
Yeah, I don't think we broke out the lobby part in this, but yeah, I can look at that. But it's configurable to different options, I think, is how we can consider it.
Because that's a smaller number than the rec center. So it'd be helpful for the board to at least have that as an option if you're looking at, and Pat, do you think if we did do that as a phase 1, doing the barn, would you be able to program that?
We would,
Pretty quick.
we would program that immediately, yes.
I just wanted to say, we got Pennypack Trust got a grant working with us with the farmstead in Upper Moreland. I don't know, 500,000? I forget how big that grant was.
For the environmental improvement?
Yeah.
We got 350,000, they got 335, I think, something like that.
So when that grant was granted, Deputy Secretary came out to the farm and was very excited about this. Said she was going to use it as a model for other programs in the state. So I think you talk about sustainability, they're all on board with that. So I think that's a good thing about it.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate the presentation and the
Thank you very
information.
much. This is great.
Commissioners, again, for your digestion, and it's perhaps something we revisit in the near future.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited personally.
You couldn't tell.
Oh,
by my
other
line of
commissioner comments?
Oh. Right.
So I think this pretty much settles the debate between a building, any kind of building at Woodlawn and this one here. You guys covered every single point that I was concerned about. Parking, the overflow of parking with the campus that we have at the school. We've done those events before where we took overflow and you brought people even by carriage.
Yes, absolutely.
to the farmstead. You covered ADA accessibility. One of those pictures I saw was a loft inside the barn. I'd actually be in favor of an elevator to make use of a loft area in a barn. There's definitely enough headroom there. And I'm very much opposed to encapsulating the barn and building a gymnasium. I think that they have to go together. And I'd much rather phase my financing than phase my construction. So if I get long-term financing and go ahead.
I just want to be clear on how much extra money we're spending to do things in the barn versus another option, a new building. I
Okay.
just think we need to pay attention to that.
Absolutely
spending
agree with
money
that.
on that.
So, I mean, there was some conversation about, let's build this gymnasium first and get that using. I'm opposed to that. I think we need all those other aspects of it. We have gymnasiums available in the schools.
From what I've heard, that we have a need, a real
We
need
do
for
have a
more
need.
gym
We
space.
absolutely have a need, just like we have needs for fields, you know, but we do have some availability at the schools right now. And we talked about a community center forever, since they tore
Yeah.
down Cold Springs.
Yeah.
You know, some people in this room don't know what Cold Springs was. But I really think we have to go with this. Personally, I'm supporting a project that does both at once. And like I said, you can get long-term financing, you know. And I'd rather see that than budget so many $1 million every year than to try to phase my construction. I think there are some grants out there for planning, and I think we should look into that as far as getting more designs for this. But I think this settles the debate about whether we're having building Woodlawn or not. And I'm in favor of this over that.
I
Thank you.
agree.
Thank you.
Claire,
Other commissioner comments? Any public comments?
I had one other question, Commissioner. Claire, is there someone in your office that would be able to answer questions about the tax credit option?
We have some consultants that specialize in it that I could speak with or put you in touch with them.
Yeah, really the question is just, would it be eligible? Because if it is a 20% tax credit, even if you say a $10 million project, that could be, between $1 million and $2 million.
I
Would
can
be
reach out to
significant.
them.
Okay.
To that point, Claire, does your office help to identify grant opportunities?
Most of our clients are or nonprofits or municipalities, and many of our projects are on historic sites. So much of our work as we develop projects is assisting with providing information as needed. And we're also aware of different grant programs, many of which I think are already in play or being pursued here. But
Okay.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
we don't write the grants, but we
Sure.
can assist.
That's what we have Pat for.
What's that?
That's what we have Pat for.
And I will look into the tax credit qualification as well. From what I understand, once the property is listed on the National Register versus being recommended, which it is currently now, then that would give us the ability for the tax credits. So.
And I should clarify one point. I was using a $10 million figure. I think the tax credit is only applicable on the historic building.
On the historic,
Yeah, so but it can include new construction, new systems, all that. It doesn't have to just be only historic repair. It can be, adaptively reusing that historic building. Probably wouldn't apply to the new rec center, but I think it would clearly apply to everything within the barn.
Regarding financing, something we've never done, but a lot of nonprofits do it. I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, but just something to think about, is a corporate entity that would support maybe the new construction, not the historic part of it, but if they put their name on it. I'm not saying I'm in favor of that, but it's just something to think about, there's a lot of entities that might put their name on that gymnasium. So it's something we do have to think about as far as spending taxpayer dollars.
I think, Jolie, you had a question or a comment?
Waiting for my turn. Thank you for the all the thoughtful consideration that's already gone into this. Most of my questions have been addressed already. One is around the parking, because what's there is not paved and doesn't have lines largely. So while there might be 54 spaces, that's only when people actually park.
I can jump in there, sorry.
Excellent.
As part of the improvement plan that we're going to talk about here very shortly, that's ongoing right now, that parking lot will be paved either this fall or in the spring, and it will be lined.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. Matt, kind of going off of where you were coming from, I'm just wondering if it's possible for an introduction to be made between an organization that has successfully used the historical tax credits and the appropriate members of the township, of which it might be you. The qualifier of like successfully has used it made me a little concerned of what it might look like when it's not successfully used. So any lessons learned would be appreciated. And also, how often are the schools not able to accommodate the need for gym space?
I don't have an answer to that from the school district, but I can tell you what the youth groups told me was they're not even close to getting their needs met. The youth hoops rents gyms that are not in the township in order to get their program, enough space for their program to work. Other organizations like Little League and soccer don't offer indoor winter practices or workouts because there's no space available for them. So the gyms at the schools, to the best of my ability, are in use every day, Monday through Sunday, especially during the late fall, winter, and early spring.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes. And
Okay.
as chair of the facilities committee on the school board, I will take a closer look
Yeah,
at that.
please do. I know, like, when we request space for certain programs, certain times, it's full. Youth groups have it, or whatever organizations are in there, but, and then they do pay a fee to use the school facilities, which perhaps they would pay here or
Yeah.
would not.
Yeah.
And then I think on weekends or after hours, they pay an additional custodial fee too. But I don't have those numbers. I don't schedule it for the school district.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Once again, thank you very much for a very enlightening presentation. Jump down to approval of the minutes from June 19th. Are there any exceptions or changes?
No.
Hearing none. All right, we're up down to Parks and Recreation Monthly Report.
Before you have our June report from the administration, the recreation, and the maintenance division, a couple highlights, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. I spent some time last month out at Pileggi Park with the Public Works Department that was paving our parking lot. Also, the Parks and Rec crew assisted. That project is completed. Turned out very well. We still need to stripe it, and we're talking to a contractor now to stripe the parking area. Been working with the neighbors at Northwell Grove. You may recall we're installing a new playground there. The existing playground has been removed by the Parks and Rec Department. The site has been prepped for the installation of the new playground, which will happen by a contractor. It's supposed to come this week to install it. It usually takes them 3 to 4 days, takes them 3 to 4 days to install the new playground. Once they're done, our crews will come in and put stone drainage, fabric down, and safety surface on top of that. That takes maybe 4 or 5 days. So we're 10 to 12 days away from that being usable. We will also come back, us and hopefully with Public Works, and put a sidewalk around the entirety of the playground, as you see in most of our parks, that holds the safety surface in place. In speaking with the community, I would like to hold a grand reopening. They're way ahead of me. Sycamore Village folks are on the ball. They're planning something for September. They have not given me the date yet, but when they do, I will make sure that the Board of Commissioners knows, the commissioners know, and really excited about the opportunity that's happening out there. Our summer camp started at Supervised Playgrounds. It's very hectic this year. We went back to our expanded hours and our hundreds and hundreds of kids. Can't use the middle school because I guess some construction or whatever's occurring there, so we're all cramped into some areas. Thank you to the school for allowing us to use those areas, but it's very, very tight, and Kate is dealing with that all summer long. We have our Teen Treks Camp, where we take teenagers on trips each day, and they're week-long camps. A couple of them did not run because we didn't meet minimums. On the maintenance side, the crews were working out there at Northwell Grove, as I noted. We did have to remove the fountain in the pond at Woody's Fishing Hole. It gets fishing wire and everything else gets in there. We thought we had it working. We could not get it working. We sent it to where we purchased it. They are repairing it and will send it back to us. They said the timeline is about 10 days from now. So hopefully we'll get that back in the pond. The pond has been without an aerator for a little over 3 weeks. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Got a question?
I don't. Pat?
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about the cottage coming down. So that's another exciting thing that's been happening. All right, well, library report.
Good evening. My name's Lisa Quinn. I live at 3505 Westmoreland Road in Willow Grove. I am on the Board of Trustees for the Upper Moreland Free Public Library. It's my 9th year. If I may, I have a handout to give to everyone that I'll refer to in a minute.
Thank you.
So Summer Quest is our children's summer reading program. It's well underway. In addition to offering incentive prizes for turning in their reading logs, summer programs or events featured this summer include our tiny art show. It's on display now through August 20th. The library provides patrons with a kit that includes one very small 4x4 canvas to create their art and instructions with a submission form. The results are really great. We have about 33 entries that are posted on the window of the small group meeting room, and they're definitely worth a walk over to see in the library. Another program I'd like to mention is the Eyes of Wild Exotic Animal Encounter. This program is going to be on Monday, August 14th at 2 p.m. Children will learn about the lives of some of Earth's amazing creatures and receive a creative, enjoyable, and personal view of the natural world. Our next virtual author talk series will be Erica Sanchez discussing her book, Crying in the Bathroom, a Memoir, on Tuesday, July 25th, tomorrow, at 4 p.m. You can register online on the library's website. And our outdoor environmental education center fence is going to be installed by Main Street Fence, and it's scheduled for Thursday, August the 3rd.
All right.
A new 9-question community input survey, which there is a QR code on the paper that I just handed out, but I have more. That is being distributed today through the end of September. It asks participants for their opinions regarding the library services and resources, as well as hours and communications. You can complete the survey only once, and you're encouraged to enter so that you can enter a drawing for an iPad Mini 5. The survey is available through the library website, a QR code, or on paper. So if you can, please take a couple minutes and participate to let your opinions be heard. Thank you for sending the Upper Moreland Free Public Library the invoice to submit payment of $10,100 to Upper Moreland Township for the fire alarm installed last year. And lastly, I was wondering if the plan remains to freshen up the library patio facing Park Avenue once the Willow Grove Shopping Center completes the second phase and adds the hardscaping to their new driveway. Do you mind providing us with a status update of those proposed improvements?
It is in the capital plan. I think we'll be talking about funding in the next couple months, because I think, if I remember right, Matt Hocker was suggesting a part of it come from ARPA. But it's in the works, but we have not finalized funding or any kind of date. As you know, that's something that has been discussed for some time. So it is on our capital plan.
Okay. All right.
Are there any minor things that are part of that plan that could be done?
I'm sorry,
Are there any minor things, like striping isn't a big deal, that could be done?
I think with what she's referring to, at least the one is all of the brick
Right.
it's all kind of heaving, and really the only way you can deal with that is you kind of have to rip it up. And
Yeah, I think I remember, weren't there like 3 different options we were provided for what we want to do there? And
yeah, I don't remember if there was 3, but there were options.
then we said we were going to wait because the shopping center, is that what we're waiting for?
Yeah, that was one of the, make sure it's kind of done at the same time so it works, it gets compatible.
Works well with
that.
it, yeah.
They got the entrances together anyway, right?
Yeah.
Should be aligned.
Yeah, aligned, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions for the library at this time? All right. Well, then I thank you for your I thank you for your ongoing support of the Upper Moreland Free Public Library. And if anybody wanted a copy of that handout, I do have some extras. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
While we're talking about the library and some of the, the plans that we have for realignment of the parking lot, I'm very concerned about the volume of parking that and a pedestrian walkway. I'm thinking that we can allow for pedestrian walkway in between bumpers where cars are parked, as opposed to outside. There might be, some industrial reasons why not, or why we could, but I've always been concerned about how the cars are parked and there's no allowance for pedestrian access back and forth through the parking lot.
I I don't understand the bumpers. Are you talking about the center parking aisle?
Yeah, like, so if there was a walkway down the middle of that, I think it would be more pedestrian friendly.
Okay.
Probably talking about additional, you know, a loss of 4 foot. I don't know what that does to the total, calculations of parking. It's just somewhere, when I look at all, how we envision parking, I don't see where we have allowed for a pedestrian to walk from a parking spot all the way up near Center Avenue through a lot of cars to get to the library.
Sorry, Commissioner Skull, but just to touch on that from the overall municipal complex development concept, I think it's a good point. It's something that we should talk about when we're,
In another
you know,
meeting, sure.
figuring out the whole campus parking situation, because that whole parking area is going to be reconfigured anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that so that the library has some input on it, that's all.
Sure.
All right. Moving backwards to old business. Farmstead Carriage House renovation bid recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before you have a bid recommendation for improvements to the carriage house. You may recall, we bid this earlier this year for the farmhouse and carriage house, and the numbers came back too high. So we lessened the scope and prepared the bid specs for the carriage house only. We did receive 2 bids. The numbers came in at the low responsible bidder was $242,100. We have $200,000 in grants for this project, so we're coming up a little bit short. What I've attached to this is the bid tabulation, a recommendation from Gilmore Associates, and a recommendation from Mark Thompson, who did the architectural information for this. I also attached an Excel sheet talking about all of the improvements that the Farmstead Alliance requested to do maybe about 2 years ago, and the total cost for those. And I didn't want to separate one from the other because I think they're all equally important. However, it comes, in the end, we're going to be about $32,000 short to do this project and all of the other project that the Farmstead Alliance would like to complete. The $32,000 shortage possibly could be made up from ARPA funds that were approved for Parks and Recreation. The board approved $100,000 for projects. We completed those projects and we saved $36,000 in doing those. Some of those we did in-house, some of those we got donated, some of those projects. We also saved about $13,000 in the downtown fountain. So there's some ARPA money that's left over that was earmarked for Parks and Rec that perhaps could be utilized to offset this. If we go with the cottage only and don't discuss any of the other farmstead improvements, we're $42,000 short. Those ARPA funds, if the board is so inclined, could be used to cover that shortage so that we can award this project. We were very discouraged that the numbers came back at 242.1 when we thought they were going to come in closer to 200,000 or even a little bit under 200,000.
Yeah.
It was the same rationale that they gave us before. They don't like to bid these projects. There's overhead, so, you know, the same thing that we hear probably in every time we bid. My recommendation, along with the Farmstead Alliance, and Alice could speak to it if he wishes, is that we need to do this project. That building is in rapid decay. And if that building is not restored immediately, there will not be a building there in the very, very near future. So I would recommend that we move forward. Additionally, and we're going to talk about Alan's projects as an agenda item here in a minute, that Excel spreadsheet I gave you that Alan helped prepare, actually Alan prepared it and I assisted, shows the total cost for his Farmstead Alliance recommendation at $329,000, almost $330,000. We have $297,000. As I said, we're $32,000 short. If we use that, air quotes, extra ARPA money, we could still accomplish all of those goals and projects that the Farmstead Alliance wanted to do about 2 years ago. Did I explain that well enough for you? Because there was a lot of word salad in there for me.
Sounded good.
Yeah. Just keep talking,
Yeah,
right?
This was a lot of, go ahead.
Come from another angle. We have all these things that we wanted to do to make the property presentable. Get the fence down, get the barn open, et cetera. And that's where these costs would be applied.
Yeah, exactly, and it would be to restore the carriage house, diminish the cottage, which is already done, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute. There was some bills there or invoices for architectural fee and engineering fee. Demolish the kitchen off of the farmhouse was one of the projects, do a barn post and rail improvement, barn window replacement, and the spring house diminishment, securing that structure, in which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So those were all of the projects that were outlined prior. The numbers are higher than they were a year and a half ago when they were requested, and Alan's report later has some more details on that. So I wasn't sure if we should separate one or two. For myself, I think they all need to be done, and pulling one out and not doing some doesn't continue the goal that we set for ourselves.
What was the earmarked remainder that you have from ARPA funds for Parks and Rec?
I have $36,537 that were earmarked for Parks and Recreation. And Randy just reminded me just a few minutes ago, and he said he would double check, but the downtown fountain, I think we said it was going to be $30,000. We did it for around 16,000 and change, so we have 13,000 there. So the 36 and 13 is 49,000 thereabouts extra money.
What you have that's unallocated at this point?
It was allocated to Parks and Recreation. It was not needed.
Let me rephrase the question. Parks and Rec has that money in their wallet, but has no use for it at this point.
Don't ever say that.
It has no current designation.
Yes,
for that.
that's correct.
You could always find use for it, and I would.
That is correct too.
Sure you would love. Okay.
We will by June 30th.
Yeah. Okay. And then the numbers that are in this this table. When was the most recent update for these numbers?
Monday.
Okay, so you got newer cost estimations for the items in gray as of Monday?
Yes, so Alan provided a cost estimate, you got the quote last week for $11,500 for the kitchen, Alan. He also got the 3,500 for the, when I say securing the diminished spring house, the walls are erect now, the foundation walls are up, but there's spaces in between, so we need to make sure something is in there so that they don't collapse or buckle over. So yeah, so those numbers are Alan, maybe you can help me with that.
Everything sounds good to my ears.
They're all recent as of, as late as Monday, middle of last week to Monday.
All right, yeah, because it sounds good. It sounds
Monday.
good to think that we're short 32, but we could potentially have 49, but then we are consistently having an issue in getting people to do this work at our target numbers. So that 49 could fill it up real fast or still not be enough.
I completely agree with you, and especially at this park, the numbers,
Yeah.
the quotes don't seem to last very long. If we don't do the work immediately,
Yeah, yeah, that's the next point, right? Because these numbers came in Monday, if we want to lock in this type of stuff. And Alan, was this square footage, rough order of magnitude numbers, or was this somebody actually looking at the facility and giving you a quote?
Are you talking about the spring house?
I'm talking about any of the gray items that are actual like construction work that hasn't been completed yet or bid out. So demolition of farmhouse kitchen, barn post and rail improvements, barn window replacement, and then securing the diminished spring house.
All these are quotes.
These are quotes. So if we,
Actually, the securing of the diminished spring house, 2,500 of it is actually the engineering. We will be working on ways to get this thing constructed for the balance of that, it's not going to be a complicated structure, so.
you get $2,500 for engineering and then $1,000 to implement the design.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, these are the demolition of the kitchen farmhouse. It's not in writing, but it was. I sat with the gentleman at Heartland, and we went through the numbers, and he gave me that number.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I'm asking this, Brady, because if these are legit numbers, Commissioner Skull decides to push this forward, and we agree to it, and we sign this stuff August 8th after our next meeting, that's the number, we're locked into that number, and anything that comes after that would be a change order, and we'd have to deal with it at that point. All right, so we have pretty good confirmation that $32.6 thousand is what we're over.
Yeah.
table of events.
Yeah, I've got quotes for the windows, the barn, the post and rail improvement, actually is much lower. I built a contingency on that. So, yeah, these are fairly accurate. These are accurate to my knowledge.
Okay.
And I would agree, I'm very confident in them, but I've been confident before in this particular park.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, if it's something the board wants to move on, we will get those contracts signed immediately, and then they're locked into them.
Okay.
So I just have one question. When we approved the 75,000 from ARPA funding, we had, so 30,000 of it was for select barn deficiencies. Now, are we still doing all those things?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's all, they're not all broken out into line items.
And it's safe.
Yeah, the goal for the barn is to get that fence down. The goal is to have the insurance carrier come over and take a look at the work we've done and said, you don't need the fence, it's safe now, yes. We do want to remove that fence. The only thing that is not on here, and I met this morning with Divot, I think they have a new name now, but and we're going to talk about it shortly, the diminished cottage has the walls still up for the spring house. We need to secure entrance into that. So it's about a 12-foot fall. The walls are high, they're maybe 5 feet above ground, but kids can certainly climb over and jump down. So there may be another $900 in fencing that I need, which could come out of my budget, not part of this, to secure that spring house.
Good.
One of those numbers in there was 20,000 for demolition of the kitchen building. And I can think of some other commissioners who would love to demolish that. It's much easier than building stuff.
The original number was higher. Alan has that number down to 11,500, I think 11,500 to demo, which, yeah.
But still,
Yeah.
could be a saving. And as we've done before, bring out the trash trucks, haul away, we're done.
Lots of insurance waivers. So I'm under the impression that if you have that money earmarked with no dedicated items to purchase at this point, Farmstead Park is a park, and I would be willing to say, use that money, lock this all in, get it done. Let's get this off the table, like be done with this. So that way we've got a good, clean slate. And when we start looking at other things to do with this park, we're not worried about all of this baseline garbage that we've been, saddled with for a while. All right, thanks.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're seeing, I mean, we've been kind of talking about this and going out to bid for the last year or two. Inflation appears to be like that 5 or 10% range, and all we do when we wait is it just continues to go up.
Got to bite at this.
So I think at some point we're going to have to just get some work done, realizing we wouldn't get all the work we originally had thought. We just got to lock it in.
If it was a new project, I would say let's wait. Let's see what numbers come down and fluctuate. But this is a safety concern and an eyesore concern. That the longer we wait on this, even if numbers level out, it's still going to be more expensive than we originally assumed.
Yeah, and Alan's going to have another report in a little bit about some other improvements down the road. But for instance, the farmhouse was removed from this project. There was some work we wanted to do on the chimney and other. That is not now included. So that is something, okay. But this will take care of the spring house cottage, will take care of the carriage house, should take care of the barn and all. And so those three structures should be good to go. And actually the farmhouse, while we want to do work, it's safe and in pretty good shape right now. There's work that needs to be done, but it would essentially mean the three buildings that are left standing are in safe shell, stabilized, thank you. And the cottage was brought down.
Good, that's exciting.
So we're going to move this to the full board in August?
Great.
All right.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Any comments from the?
Any comments from other commissioners? No? From the public? No. All right. Well, next we have a report on the farmstead itself. Mr. Shepman, am I right?
The environmental.
Wait.
First.
Oops. I just had the paper in front of me.
just wanted to give you a quick environmental and cottage diminishment update. I'll start with the cottage. The cottage has been removed. That project is done. It was $21,800. The company came in about 8 or 9 days, got the cottage completely down, removed all the rubble. Some of it, the Farmstead Alliance wanted to keep for another purpose, which Alan will talk about later. And if you go visit there now, you'll see 3 remaining walls from the original spring house. I did meet with our insurance carrier today. We looked over the site. There is an opening on ground level that you could step into. It's secured right now, but you could fall 10 or 12 feet, so that will have to be secured with a fence. It's secure now, but we're gonna do additional securing. And on the backside, so if you picture this as a U, the backside, you can walk right in, and there is some water laying in there right now, which we pump out daily. It is a spring house, so there's a spring and there's a drain. We have to figure out where that drain goes and clear that, but that needs to be secured too. So Peter wrote a recommendation for us today, and it's as simple as adding 2 posts and chain link fence on either side, right? Not all 4 sides, just 2 sides. And that is certainly something our crews can do, or we can get a contractor in there for a very minimal fee. And we will act on that immediately. As far as the environmental project, the work has started. Think Green is doing work at Farmstead Park, totals over $650,000 in environmental improvements. It's reorienting the current walking trail. The reorientation will take it cross slope the hill that is there. It will be ADA compliant. It will cross over the creek and will meander around the back side or the south side of the property all the way back to the creek. It will not recross the creek in that area, so you have to walk down, turn around, and walk back. A lot of the invasive plant material that was in the park has been removed. More has to be removed, but that's all been marked by Pennypack Trust. A group of volunteers has helped with that, and Think Green has done that. They have begun what I'll call skinning the south field, which is across the creek from the structures. And that will, in the fall, will be planted with an evapotranspiration garden. Did I get that? The design is such that when water comes in, the trees will soak up some of the water. It will not decrease the flooding. And we were clear with the neighbors that this is not a flood remedy. It is not a retention basin. It is designed to be a beautification, environmental improvement, and to soak up some average rainfall water. So it will assist, but not to any large degree. All of that work is continuing to occur, should be concluded by the fall. However, depending on the native plant materials that are available in the fall, if they can't get them, it will continue into the spring. At the conclusion of all that, the township is going to pave that parking lot and stripe that parking lot. So very exciting at Farmstead Park. We've done the cottage. Hopefully we're taking care of the carriage house. The barn fence will come down, environmental improvement, parking improvement. I mean, I think we're finally starting to see the turn at Farmstead Park. So be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm just wondering about in the wetlands area, are the neighbors aware that all this activity is going, has it started?
Met with the neighbors 3 times through this process, 3 neighborhood meetings where a number of neighbors came out. Yes, they're aware. There's a concern with flooding on the northwest side of the property during the heavy rains. And there was a concern from one of the neighbors who lives on, I think it's Round Meadow Lane, where the outflow pipe is through the property. There's ENS control measures in there, erosion sediment control measures, and he was worried that if the rain hits some of those socks, it might drift down towards his property. I've spoken with the neighbors twice, and our engineers have spoken with them. The county has approved all our ENS. I was there on Sunday a week ago when it was very heavily raining. The water did not, when I was there, get to his property, nor did he call me after the fact. All of his concerns were before. I don't think he was satisfied with my answers or our engineer's answers, but I don't think he and she had any concerns during the storms.
Good. All right. All right, Alan, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm here I was requested to come and brief the committee, update report on the the budget to restore the structures. And I put together a two-page piece. Everyone had it. I don't know if you guys received the presentation with the pictures related to the, I don't know if you need to see them tonight. I'm plugged in, but I don't see anything on the screen. But essentially, really, the budget and the plan is really could be viewed in two phases. One of them is getting the historic structures restored, exteriors, interiors, in that order, for the most part. We've already begun. We've been doing this earnestly, this plan since the beginning of the pandemic, and have some things done at the farmhouse. We're doing some demo work inside the carriage house so that the roofing project can continue unabated and get finished by the end of the year. So essentially, what we're looking at here in the next 3 to 5 years for just the restoration efforts is close to $1.5 million worth of work. It's related to exterior repairs and lime coating of buildings, constructing the spring house, finishing the carriage house, and all the things related to the restoration of the barn. And the numbers are, some of it's square foot based, roughly around $500 a square foot with respect to some of the work inside the barn, as far as restoring and replacing a lot of the flooring, and repairing the forebay, which has a large price tag put to it. And then the other, for consideration, and one of the reasons why I put this in here is simply because of the fact that we're not working on the farmhouse just yet. And that is the idea that we could conceivably create 3,000 square feet, additional square feet of space by bringing back the 18th century workhouse, German workhouse.
Excuse me, Alan, you think we can get your pictures up? I mean, it's really,
You have it.
F7,
I didn't plug it in all the way. Okay, there we go.
hey.
There we go.
Alan, before you go, I'd like to make a comment. Commissioner, this is in response to the request you had a couple months ago about where are we in the short term and where are we looking long term? So, okay.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. This was really helpful. And long-term, 3,000 additional square feet.
Yes, long-term, right. When I presented this plan a few years back, it had a $500,000 price tag. Yes, it has potentially $3 million now, but I've learned a lot of lessons in this 3-year span with this roofing project, and that is to not really trust your numbers, and it'll likely get more expensive as we go. But just to step back for a minute, just to look at the demolition of the cottage. The guys at Heartland did a fantastic job. If something's to come down, I would have them want to do it, especially if there's something underneath it that is very important to save, like the spring house. Spring house, if you're not used to this, the plastered section on the left-hand side is the walls of the spring house, which will remain. It took them about a week. The only problems they had was that they found a gigantic beehive inside one of the walls that just was persistent for their entire. And at one point in time, the grappling hook the cab was covered with them, and I don't know how the guy got out of there. This is facing the west side, where the exterior entrance to the basement. And this is what it looks like now. It's actually quite amazing that all the features inside the spring house are still in a good condition. There are these pedestals that come out, and there's only one that has been broken. And for those of you who do not know, that's above that was where the galley kitchen used to stand, and the floor had caved in a couple years ago, and all the kitchen was inside the spring house.
Alan, can you leave that picture, and can I just make a comment? Mm-hmm. When I said I met with our insurance carrier, if you look at that picture, there's a brown piece of wood in the distance. That's an opening that is secured right now. A fence will be there. And as you're looking at that picture, that is the opening where you can walk into it. That opening will be secured so people don't walk into it.
That's where the original door is on the left-hand side, and then there was a window to the right of it. So we're going to end up having to build that wall back up eventually, so. So when I talked about this extra square footage, in the history, what we uncovered, not only from some of the history that research that we were working on, as well as the conditions assessment report, there was an attached structure to the farmhouse. It was actually called a vine barn house or a German workhouse. It fits it fits right in with the who was there and what they were doing. We had a cleanup day. This is on the east side of the house, and the part of the wall still is standing right there. Our gentleman there, he's one of the neighbors and a member of our organization, Ted Smoyer. Was working that pickaxe that morning, and it was a lot of fun that day. And then, but where we're talking about, right there is the corner, and right there, the wall would have come toward us all the way across, and the building would have set perpendicular to the house. And this is what it would look like, basically. I ran this in SketchUp based on some of the measurements that we've taken over the years. And that's what it would look like. Another angle. So right now we have the opportunity to say, hey, if we're going to hold off on the exterior roofing of the house, and if there's a chance that we do something like this, it gives us the opportunity to take the pent roof off, put a nice pillared front porch, which is exactly what would happen. There's a wraparound, and it goes to a hand-dug well, and then you have 3 levels of open space with windows, heating and cooling, hand-hewed beams recreated just for the effect. Shiplap, there's actually shiplap, German shiplap that's used to shore up the rafters in the house. Evidence is still there. So,
Alan, can I interrupt?
yeah.
One of the historical things about this building is the German part, because in the time period, I guess the 18th century, Germans had their barns part of their house.
Yeah,
Just, why waste a roof or whatever? It's a very, very common feature around here. And we always wondered, what was that stone wall for it down there? And now we know.
It was in the 17, right before the Revolutionary War. This was one of the one of the top producing farms in the area based on its taxation. The guy cranked out a lot of liquor and sold it to taverns. Anyways, that's what that used to happen here. So, yeah, I put the numbers together. A lot of it stuff come from actual quotes. Some of it I extrapolated on the basis of square footage on what it would take to repair masonry. And we have holes to fill the farmhouse once we get the kitchen addition down. There's a 1970s louvered window, for example, that needs to come out, and stone needs to go in, plastered. And so there's a lot of work that still needs to be done on these structures. So yeah, I mean, that's essentially it as far as the report. Do you have any questions so far?
So this was extremely helpful, and it's great to see it as, a total of the entire facility and then a breakdown of scope per building. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's nice to see that, if we take the list that we just looked at and we compare that to this, you're going to have a couple more line items that we can start to cross out in the not too distant future. Mm-hmm. It's also nice to see that there's actually things that have been done, right?
Yes.
Because I think that's just as important as knowing what still needs to be done, because we want to make sure that there are actually improvements happening on this site. And it's good to know that your team, along with Pat and whoever else is involved, is really starting to make this a better park.
I meet with organization Wednesday. We are going to be putting some dates to volunteer work, to work on the interiors, to get them prepped for various things. We're also going to start working with the township, Pat, maybe identify some meetings that we can set up and have a strategy about how to not go after a $10,000 grant here or $20,000 grant here, but think about
RCAP funding, using the township's property as its value as leverage for match money. It can happen. That's how other organizations have done it in the past. Exploring ways that we can get to $3-4 million through a combined effort with going after grants, whether it's through the community funding project, through state legislators, or federal at the federal level as well as the 1772 Foundation, and Pennsylvania Historic Commission. So, yeah.
No, that's a good point too, because I like your last table on here, the funding sources for the plan. All of them are not township, which is fantastic. So starting to be able to identify other avenues is great. You have ARPA on there as an unknown, and I think we've sort of talked about that and crossed that bridge. I guess the gate's open, but it's open a crack. The rest of these are really, it's good to see that on there, and some chipping out of what you think you can get.
And I would like to have a plan together with the nonprofit and the township to know what we're going after when the windows open up, and we're ready to write or have people write for us, so that we can go for these dollar amounts.
Yeah, I agree, because I think you can leverage the fact that you're part of the township, but also leverage the fact that you're a separate entity. So we could all be going after the same grants, and all start to chip away at the same pot, which would be ideal. Hopefully not at a detriment to any one project, but instead, doubling up. So two quick things. The next step on this, Alan, that I would like to see would be individual scoping narratives for what these projects actually are, the ones that are still open, so that when we do look at them and try to identify funding streams or contractors or volunteer efforts, we can see what exactly needs to be done. Because like you saw with this last application, we needed to break that into different parts. So knowing if there's clear phasing that could happen in some of these points would be great. The other thing that, just to bring your attention, I don't know if you saw this in the news recently, but Linwood Hall over in Elkins Park was purchased. So we should see what they're doing. We should see how that's working out, and get in contact with them and see how we can discuss ventures.
Yeah, I have, with my contacts through the city of Philadelphia and with Fairmont Park Conservancy, understanding that they have a historic conservation team that's worked with us.
Yep.
And their experiences in what's going on in the city, in their park system right now is also good to glean from their opportunities and understanding and their failings and their successes.
Yeah.
So that we can learn how to do it up here on a smaller scale. Well, not so small.
This is a big project.
It's a big project.
Yeah.
So, but I've always viewed these set of buildings not as historic structures, but they could conceivably, with the barn expansion and perhaps the workhouse, as a very unique set of campus, historic campus, community campus, that can be used every square foot of it. So.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, Commissioner, you said it, and that was Alan and I and Kate, that, our goal is we're combining the past, the present, the future, the environment, some economics. I mean, this could be a showcase for the county or even a broader area once we can get through all this.
Yeah, this is, I've never not thought that this is a big deal. Right? This is a big deal. It has, Commissioner Skoll's done a lot of work to keep hammering it in there too, and it's there's a lot of opportunity here.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everyone.
Just wanted to explain, because I love this idea. So we're going to borrow $1 million, right? And what's the township match? When we have this property, it's worth $1 million, so that's our part. We're going to bring the property, and someone's going to give us another $1 million. That's a great plan.
I like that idea. I think to a certain degree we could leverage the value of that asset, and to be able to raise the dollars needed for the historic preservation and even resurrecting an extant structure. So.
All right. Thank you, Alan. I'm very excited. Are there any community comments?
I'm just wondering if we have an action item for August 7th for the carriage house.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we're down to new business. Seeing none? All right, and we're going to consider we are considering the cancellation of the August 21st, 2023 Parks and Rec meeting, as tradition. And we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.